All right, welcome back to another episode of the Conviction Fiction, where we break down the thinking patterns, habits, and mindsets that keep us stuck and build new ones that move us toward real freedom. Today, we're talking about something every one of us has done and paid the price for, and that's the closed channel. Go ahead and get into it. All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast, the place where we don't just talk about change, we walk through it, unpack it, break it down, and rebuild it from the inside out. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and as you know, every episode is about transformation that starts in the mind and works its way into your habits, your choices, your character, and eventually your freedom. In today's topic, this one hits close because it's something that keeps so many people stuck long after the bars open. Today, we're talking about the closed channel, a mental shutdown, a refusal to hear anything that challenges your comfort, your ego, or your narrative. And look, I don't say that from some high horse. I've lived this. I've walked into conversations fully armed up, ready to block anything that sounded like truth. You can tell me nothing. Because in my mind, if I didn't let it in, it couldn't hurt me. What I didn't realize is that shutting out the world was also shutting out my own growth. So, guess we need to define the closed channel. What is a closed channel? Basically, a closed channel is when you stop listening, not just to other people, but to yourself. It's when you filter out feedback, when you dodge accountability, when you protect your comfort zone instead of your future. That's why I said you stop listening to yourself, because most of us want brighter futures, but the closed channel would have us block out even listening to ourselves, even listening to that future that we want to hold. It's basically when you reject the very thing that can help you heal. And it shows up in the smallest moments. Someone gives you advice and you immediately feel attacked. Someone corrects you and you automatically get defensive. A friend tells you the truth and then you ghost them, never to talk to them again. Maybe it's a counselor that tries to guide you and you hit them with the, man, you don't know me. Maybe it was a family member. They try to warn you about something and you immediately shut down. So it has a combination of signs and symptoms, basically silence, sarcasm, eye rolls, walking out, switching topics. Those are all signs of a closed channel. And you know what's wild? A closed channel doesn't stop the world from speaking. It just stops you from hearing. And when you're not hearing, you're not learning. And when you're not learning, you're definitely not going to grow. So it's one of those things. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about identity, like who you were, basically who you are, who you became, and who you're trying to be. We talk about reentry, reinvention, and the fight to rewrite the narrative after the world has already stamped you with the label. But none of that happens. None of that happens if your channel is closed. I've met men and women inside who were brilliant, gifted, insightful, but absolutely unreachable. Not because they lacked potential, but because they lacked openness. They built walls for protection, and those walls kept out everything that could have helped them evolve. And here's the truth that hurts a little. Most of us don't close our channel because we're stubborn. We close it because we're scared. Scared of being wrong, scared of being vulnerable, scared of being seen, scared of being looked at as you need to tell me what to do, scared of changing the story we've been telling ourselves for years. But there's a cost to staying closed, a huge one. When you shut down, opportunities walk right past you. Your support system gets tired. People stop trying. resources fade, and then you're left wondering why nothing is changing when the whole time the door was locked from the inside. So today, before we go deeper into reflection and examples and corrective steps, I want you to just sit with one thought. What if the thing I've been praying for is already in front of me, but I can't receive it because my channel is closed? This episode is about opening that channel slowly, safely, honestly, so transformation can finally flow. Now, when you have, been running with this closed channel for your entire life, let's just go ahead and get into the real talk. Just skip to it. The part where this message moves from theory to your life, because the closed channel isn't some abstract concept that belongs in a textbook. It's very personal. It's lived. It's a pattern that shows up in the moments when we were trying to protect our pride, our wounds, or our image. And it's a pattern that every one of us, myself included, has fallen into at some point. Now, let me ask you something. And I want you to be honest with yourself, because honesty is the first step towards any kind of transformation. When was the last time somebody tried to help you and you refused to listen? Think about that moment. No, just really think about that moment. Think about their face. Think about what they were trying to say. And then I want you to think about how quick you were to shut it down. It might have been your mom, might have been your dad, or it might have been some figure trying to warn you about the crowd you were hanging with, right? It might have been someone at school trying to tell you what responsibility looks like. It might have been a partner that you're in a relationship saying that I need more from you. It might have just been a friend telling you, hey, I think this is going to end up bad right here. Or maybe it was somebody you didn't even like. Maybe it could have been a parole officer. Most of us, shout out to the parole officers that might be listening, but it might have been a parole officer, a caseworker, a counselor, someone that you really don't feel keen to, but because of their title, you feel uncomfortable around them. And because not what they said, but you shut the whole message down before it even landed. A lot of us learned early that listening made us vulnerable. We grew up in environments where listening to someone meant giving them leverage over you, like you're what they say, you are big broing me, right? Where letting your guard down meant exposing your soft spots. So we adapted, we toughened up, we sharpened our edges, and eventually we built a whole identity around not letting anything or anyone crack the surface. But here's the thing. Some of the people you shut down were the very people who could have changed your trajectory. They could have changed your life. And I know that's hard to admit. So let me push a little bit deeper. Let me just go a little bit deeper into this conversation. How do you usually react when someone gives you correction or advice? Do you immediately get defensive, or do you shut down emotionally? Do you raise your voice? Maybe you're a little slick with it and you try to change the subject. Maybe leave the room. Sometimes you might even tell yourself, oh, they just hating. They don't understand me. They're just trying to control me. They don't know nothing about me. What we don't always realize is this. A defensive reaction is often a sign that the truth struck a nerve. It's like automatic defensive stance that we take. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about the internal stories we tell ourselves, the narratives that justify our behavior, protect our ego, and keep us from facing the deeper work. A closed channel is one of the biggest barriers to rewriting that narrative. Because if you never, ever let anyone challenge your story will never evolve. It never matures. It never aligns with your growth. I'm going to share something personal with you guys. Like, there are times in my life when someone was genuinely trying to help me, trying to pull me out of a dangerous mindset. They offered a lifeline and I treated their concern like an attack. I mistook love for control. I mistook guidance for criticism. And looking back, some of the hardest lessons I've learned could have been avoided if I had just opened my channel long enough to hear the message. But that's the thing about the closed channel. You don't know what you're missing when you're blocking everything out. So right now, I want you to pause this episode if you have to, right? Just pause it and reflect on this question. Who in my life was trying to help me at a time when I refused to hear them? And what did I lose because of it? Go ahead and pause the episode, um, like get a public service announcement. But think about that. Who in my life was trying to help me at a time when I refused to hear them? And what did I lose because of it? This is the Conviction Fiction. And now for a quick commercial break.
Re-entry isn't easy. You're rebuilding, proving, and rediscovering who you are. Turning forward, the work Beyond Fear was written for you and for anyone walking beside you on this journey back home.
All right, guys. So we're back. Once you admit the moments when your channel was closed, and that was the exercise was about. You got to admit, like the moments when you close your channel when someone was actually trying to help you, and from there you can start choosing to open your channel. Right? You can start choosing to do so. Now that we've opened the door on what the closed channel looks like inside of you, let's take a look at what it looks like in real life, in real situations, like real people. We sometimes think that we're, otherworldly, we're superhuman. Well, in real life, this happens. Because sometimes we can't see ourselves clearly until we see our patterns reflected in somebody else. I want to start with James. All right. So James had been home for about 2 months. And let's be real. Those first few months are some of the hardest. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels unstable. You're trying to rebuild your life brick by brick, job hunting, reconnecting with family, just trying to stay compliant and adjust to the freedom you haven't been around in years. It's a storm. I've lived it. Many of you listening right now have lived that same story. And James was right in the middle of it, right? So James goes in for his meeting with his parole officer. She tells him he's behind on his supervision fees. Instant explosion. I don't have the money. Why should I have to pay someone to babysit me? Now, let's pause right there. We've all been in a position where the pressure was so high that even a simple sentence felt like an attack. Bills piling up, expectations soaring, fear growing. We all know that feeling. But James wasn't just reacting to the statement. He was reacting from a closed channel. His pride was talking. His fear was talking. His frustration was talking. Everything was speaking except the part of him that needed to listen. Because here's the part that stings. James never heard what came next. Because the parole officer, who he assumed was against him, was actually saying, I may be able to help you find employment. Let that sink in. That's a simple question. It seems like you're falling behind on your payments. Instead of exploding, James probably could have got to the point where he could have had an opportunity. Right? Now, he just wasn't shutting her out. He was shutting out that opportunity, a connection, maybe a resource, maybe a blessing in disguise. The closed channel cost him access. So now let's switch scenes. We're going to switch it up a little bit here. Now we're going to talk about Lisa. Lisa was part of a transition program, not too different from the ones many of you have gone through. She had a counselor assigned to her who genuinely wanted to help her set goals like process trauma, build communication skills. All that stuff is important in reentry. Everything she needed to take her next steps in life, this counselor was there to try to, walk her through it. But every session was a battlefield. When the counselor tried to guide her, Lisa rolled her eyes. When asked a direct question, she met it with silence. When encouraged to reflect, Lisa would respond with sarcasm. And the classic line, you know, you don't know me. You don't know my story. I've heard that phrase more times than I can count. And what it usually means is, I don't want to let you in because that requires honesty. I'm not ready for that. After a few weeks, the counselor finally asked her, do you want things to change or not? And Lisa, following the script, she just snapped. I'm just here so I don't get written up and I don't get sent back to jail. That wasn't resistance. That was fear wearing armor. Lisa didn't understand that the very person she was rejecting was the person who carried the tools that she needed. Again, the closed channel cost her access. Now, why do these stories matter? Why do I bring them to you on this particular podcast? It's because these aren't stories about James and Lisa for real. These are mirrors. For some of you listening right now, James is you. For others listening, Lisa is you. And for many of you, they are both of you at the same time. When you're in a closed channel, you miss out on job opportunities, emotional support, community resources, second chances, growth moments, wisdom, and more importantly, you miss out on relationships that could change your life. And here's the part we have to be totally honest about. Nobody can force you to open your channel. Not a counselor, not a PO, not your partner, not your parents. The door only opens from the inside. So let me ask you this. How much have you lost in your life because you weren't willing to listen? Not because people weren't willing to help, but because you weren't willing to listen. You weren't willing to receive. The story of James and Lisa teaches us that the closed channel isn't just a mindset. It's actually a barrier between the life you're living and the life you could be living. So let's talk about what closing yourself off really does. Now that we've looked at what the closed channel looks like and how it plays out in real situations, it's time to talk about the impact, what it actually does to your life, your relationships, your opportunities, and your future. Because the closed channel isn't just a mood, it isn't just an attitude problem. It's a whole way of thinking that shapes the entire direction of your life. And it starts off pretty small. You push away one person, you shut down one conversation, you reject one moment of truth, you ignore one chance to grow. And then you tell yourself, I'm good. I don't need this. They don't understand me anyway. But then guess what happens? People stop trying. Family members who used to call and look out, they stop calling and don't look out anymore. Friends who used to check in, stop checking in. Counselors stop pushing. And then your mentors start avoiding you. They don't even offer advice anymore. And slowly, without even noticing, you build a life where you're surrounded by silence. Not because nobody cares, but because you made it too hard to reach you. On the Conviction Fiction, we talk a lot about the cost of pride, the hidden price of thinking you have to do everything on your own. That I've got this mentality. That leave me alone, I'm straight mentality. But the truth is, you're not straight. None of us are. None of us are straight without guidance, without support, without accountability, without someone holding up a mirror and saying, hey, look, this is what you're doing. Because when you're closed off, you burn bridges before you even realize you're on the wrong side of the bridge. So when we talk about progress, progress depends on access to information, to correction, to relationships, to opportunities. You need to have access to people who can see what you can't. A closed channel removes all of it. And here's the part that most people miss. When you shut people out, you're not protecting yourself. You're actually depriving yourself. So you can continue to starve your own growth. But I mean, think about the time someone made a suggestion that could have saved you time, saved you money, or pain, and you didn't even listen. Think about a time when someone saw you heading down the wrong road and tried to pull you back, and then you just brushed them off. Or think about the advice you rejected that you later had to learn the hard way. A closed channel turns easy lessons into hard ones. It takes a 2 minute conversation and turns it into a 2 year setback. That's the power of a closed channel. And the dangerous part, for real, is that when you shut out others long enough, you start shutting out yourself. You stop hearing your intuition. You stop recognizing red flags. You stop questioning your story. You stop checking your motives. And then you forget challenging your own patterns. Eventually, you stop being honest with yourself. People think a closed channel only affects how you relate to others. That's far from the truth. It affects how you relate to you. On this podcast, Conviction Fiction, I'm your host, Antoine Rivers. I like to talk about accountability, real accountability, the kind that requires you to stand in your truth without excuses. But accountability cannot survive in a closed channel. It suffocates because accountability requires listening, and growth requires being teachable. So here's the reality: you cannot grow in silence, you cannot evolve in isolation, you can't even transform while rejecting transformation. Being open doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Being receptive doesn't make you soft, it makes you powerful. When you open your channel, you open doors. Doors to relationships, doors to healing, doors to opportunity, doors to a better story than the one you've been living. So ask yourself this: if I don't open my channel, how many more opportunities will I lose? How many blessings will pass me by? Or better yet, ask this simple question: how many people will give up trying to help me? How many people will give up trying to help me? Because this is the truth. A closed channel keeps you surviving. You're stuck in survival mode. We talk about that a lot on the podcast also. Now, an open channel helps you rise. So we got to start rising, people. And it will take some corrective actions. And I would be remiss not to talk about, like, we know what it is. We broken it down. Like, talked about what a closed channel is. We how it shows up, how the damage is, the damage it causes. Now it's time to talk about how you change it. Because awareness without action is just observation. On this podcast, we try to give you solutions. We want to give transformational messages, not just seeing the problem, but learning how to fix it. And the first thing I want you to do is know this: opening your channel doesn't happen by accident, it happens by intention, and it happens through small choices practiced consistently until they form new habits, new thinking, and eventually a whole new identity. Let's walk through some of the corrective actions you can start today. First, practice active listening. I mean, really listening. It's more than just hearing words, it's receiving them. When someone speaks, don't interrupt. Don't mentally prepare your comeback. I mean, you can sit there all day and defend yourself before they're even finished what they're trying to say. Just listen. You can also ask clarifying questions like, so what you're saying is this, or can you help me understand that better? Those questions don't just open your ears, they open your mind. Active listening builds connection, it builds trust, it builds maturity. And most importantly, it keeps your channel open. Secondly, pause before you react. One of the biggest signs of a closed channel is instant defensiveness. The truth hits you and then you snap. Go with the anger, sarcasm, shutting down, justifying. Right? That's a big one. Justifying, dismissing. That's not strength. That's self-protection. And it's keeping you stuck. It's keeping you stuck. So next time you feel triggered by feedback, just take a breath. Literally take a breath. Count to three if you have to. Then ask yourself, like, is this meant to hurt me or help me? Even if you don't agree with the feedback, Show appreciation. Thank you for sharing that with me. This kind of rewires your reaction from defensiveness to openness. And sometimes you can't process a conversation in a moment, and that's okay, but you can process it afterwards. So just write it down, right? What the person was trying to tell you, why it bothered you, what truth might have been hidden inside that, and more importantly, how could you have responded differently? We talk about identity reflection all the time here. The process of basically examining how your reactions shape who you are. Tough conversations are mirrors. They reveal what you still need to work on. Journaling, that reflection into growth is vitally important. You also can try by, disclosing something that you normally hide. One of the most powerful ways to open your channel is through honesty, not the easy honesty, the uncomfortable kind, right? Say something you usually keep locked inside. Say something like, well, something I don't usually admit is that the way my father reacted to job losses affected me and affected me in a negative way. I can talk about how if I saw my father lose a job, I could see the disappointment on his face, and I would go about my day and grow up and learn that, hey, first, I'm not going to keep a job because I don't want that disappointment. Or I'm going to do everything I can in order to keep a job. But just saying something that I kept inside, it helped me understand how I approach working. Okay. That kind of vulnerability isn't weakness. And that's just an example of that. I'm on the podcast talking about my life. That's courage. It's emotional discipline. It's accountability. Right. Um, it basically trains your mind to stay open instead of shutting down. I try to remind all of my listeners that healing doesn't start with answers, it starts with truth. Number 5, own one missed opportunity. Think of a moment, just one time when someone was trying to help you, but you shut them out. Ask yourself, what did I lose by not listening? Or a better question is, what could that moment have become if I had have been open? What could it have become if I had have been open? The goal isn't to beat yourself up. It's to wake up, to see where your closed channel costs you, and to decide what you're doing, paying that price. Always invite feedback and don't defend yourself. Choose one person, man, in your life who knows you well. I'm talking about really well. Ask them, how do you experience me when I get upset, defensive, or resistant? And then, and this is the key, just listen. Ask them for their feedback about who you are, especially in times of adversity, especially when you're upset or you're defensive. Don't debate them, don't correct them, don't minimize anything. Just absorb it, walk away with it, and reflect on it later. This is where real emotional maturity develops, in the space where you hear uncomfortable truth and decide to grow from it rather than hide from it. Right? That's where all of that emotional growth will occur. Now, opening your channel again is not a one-time decision, it's daily practice, but every time you choose openness over ego, you get stronger. Every time you choose listening over shutting down, you get wiser. Every time you choose growth over comfort or your little comfort zone, you get freer. So that's what we want to exercise moving forward. That's what we're trying to do. Freedom starts in the mind and it spreads over into your life. Okay. Now, here's the homework. Can't leave this show without giving you some homework. That inner work of opening your channel. We talked about closed channel. We talked about how it shows up. We unpacked the real life examples of James and Lisa. And we walked through corrective actions you can start practicing today. But there's one last piece, and this is the part people skip. It's the part that doesn't happen out loud in a group or even in a conversation with anyone else. This is the inner work. We talk a lot on this show about the battle behind the eyes, the fight between the person you've always been and the person you're trying to become. That fight doesn't happen in front of a crowd. It happens in the quiet, in the mirror, in those moments when nobody's clapping for you, nobody's watching, and nobody knows the conflict that's working its way through you. And that's why the homework matters. Homework is really what I like to call hard work because it's the intentional effort you make to sit with the truth, to sit with yourself, to sit with the patterns you're trying to unlearn. And in this chapter in your life, I want you to sit with one specific question. And that question is, how has being closed off hurt my growth, my relationships, or or my freedom? Was being closed off the reason why you lost your freedom, where it hurt your freedom? Now I know what some of you might be thinking. Man, that's too deep, man. I don't want to write all that. I don't even know where to start. Journaling, I don't do journals. I hear you, but I need you to hear me too. Reflection is one of the most powerful tools you have. Writing forces clarity. Clarity leads to accountability, and accountability leads to transformation. You'd be surprised how much truth comes out when you put a pen to paper. You'll be surprised how many patterns you never noticed until you see them in your own handwriting. So let's break this down. Um, Journaling is one of the most important things you can do. Okay. Answer this question and write it in your journal. Right. How has this hurt your growth? Think about the version of you that you're trying to build, the person you want to become, right? That mindset that you want to develop, the life you're trying to create. And then ask, like, what growth moments have I shut down because I refuse to listen? And you'll be amazed at the amount of moments that people who listen to this podcast, others around you, how many opportunities are missed because we refuse to listen, and how many dark days were caused because we refused to listen. How many times did pride stop me from leveling up? Man, that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother book. And growth requires input, guys. And a closed channel will stop the input before it even reaches you. Let that sink in because you need to listen to yourself. That's how journaling is important. Okay. Relationships are built on communication, but how has closed channels hurt relationships? How many relationships have you lost because of a closed channel? You didn't want to listen. Communication can't happen if your channel is closed. I like to think about the people who tried to love me, or tried to love me, and you know, those people who cared but got tired of fighting because of the walls I put up. And the apologies I never made because I never admitted to being wrong. Right? That's part of, 12-step recovery. Just making amends where you can. That's another question. That's a deeper question too. Who stopped trying because I made it too hard to reach me? What relationships could have been stronger if I had been more open? That closed channel, it protects your ego, but it destroys your connection every single time. Okay? So that's part of the homework assignment. Grab a notebook, man, on your phone or, whatever you use to capture your thoughts and just write down how being closed off has hurt your growth, your relationships, or your freedom. Write without filters. I mean, be honest, completely honest and true with yourself. Write without excuses about worrying about how it sounds. This is not for anyone else. This is for your evolution. We don't just talk about change on this show. We practice the work that leads to it. So do this assignment with honesty, do it with courage, and the intention of breaking a cycle that has cost you long enough. Your freedom, your real freedom, depends on your willingness to open your channel. Now, as we close out today's episode, I want you to sit with everything we unpacked: the definition of the closed channel, the stories of James and Lisa, the cost of shutting down, and the work required to open back up. This isn't just information, guys. This is transformation. This is the kind of transformation and reflection that separates the person you were from the person you're becoming. We talk a lot about the internal work on this show, the mindset, the discipline, the accountability, the willingness to confront the parts of yourself that are hard to face in order to make your life better. And I want to remind you of something very important. Change doesn't happen because you heard something. It happens because you received something. You let it in, you let it sit, you let it marinate, you let it challenge you, and then you let it grow you. That's what an open channel does. It turns knowledge into wisdom and wisdom into action. The closed channel says, I already know that, or I don't need that. I'm good. That's what a closed channel is. Now, the open channel conversely says, I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm willing. And the truth is, guys, the open channel is where your freedom really begins. Not just freedom from a sentence or freedom from the system, but freedom from the mindset that kept pulling you back into the same vicious cycles. Freedom from pride, freedom from defensiveness, and the need to protect your ego at the cost of your evolution. What would your life look like if you lived it with an open channel? What relationships could be restored? Are there opportunities that you might find? Are there opportunities that might find you? Imagine how much lighter you'd feel if you didn't have to carry the weight of always being right, always being guarded, or always being impenetrable. Openness isn't a weakness, receptivity isn't surrender, and humility definitely isn't submission. So I'm going to leave that with you, because all of those are strengths, deeper strengths, quieter strengths, strengths that create space for growth, connection, love, and clarity. As you walk into the rest of your day, I want you to remember this. You don't have to change everything at once. Just open your channel one moment at a time, one conversation at a time, one reflection at a time. And I promise you, the more you become, the more opportunities will open up for you, right? The more opportunities will open up. Till next time, keep growing, keep listening, and keep changing the narrative. See you guys next.